And so settling into a comfortable posture. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. So that the intention turns inward. And letting the body settle. Venerable Analayo, the Buddhist monk, uses a simple phrase, there is a body, there is a body, as a mindfulness reminder. And how much of the time do we forget that there is a body, unless it calls to us with hunger or pain or pleasure. Beginning and making a regular part of our practice, just checking in with how our body is right now. How does it feel? Oh, in the connection between mind and body, when the mind quiets, the body becomes more calm, and when the body becomes more calm, the mind quiets. So we can work on one or the other or both sort of avenues of settling. You might focus on the weight of the body as a way of sensing the settling, the body drawn to the earth by its weight. You can pay attention to the energetic states of the body, the feelings of brightness or dullness, tingling, heaviness, coolness, warmth, the pulsing, feelings of electrical energy in the body. The nervous system sending out signals, receiving signals. Soon what we see is that what we call a body or the body is actually made up of many different things. Those things can be felt. or at least some of them can be felt. And as we bring awareness to the body, we also bring awareness to the mind, to the wanderings of the mind. We use the breath as an anchoring sensation. The breath always present, always moving. And then when we realize we're lost in thoughts, that we've left the body, we acknowledge that and gently come back into the body and the breath. That working with thoughts in meditation is not just a matter of letting them go and coming back to the breath. That is the first skill, first practice we want to learn, because thoughts are so persistent and addictive. We need to learn how to just come back, to let go all the words and images, and just come back to the simplicity of breath. But we also, as we evolve in our practice, start to notice the content of thoughts. What are they telling us? What are they saying? This is a delicate process because of their addictive nature. It's so easy for us in just looking at the thought to get sucked back in and be off and running. We need to develop actually almost impersonal relationship with the thoughts. so that we can just glance at a thought, kind of put a check mark beside it, or put it into a particular bin, particular category, and then let it go. In this way, over time, you start to see the patterns of thought, both negative and positive, the addictive thoughts and the constructive thoughts. And this then allows us to change our relationship to the thoughts. Instead of being personal or belonging to us or representing some truth about us, start to see the thoughts as conditioned, as stories made up somewhere in the subconscious or carried from the past. Taken from others and adopted as our own. We see the ways that thoughts have hurt us, that we've used thoughts to harm others, to build self-destructive stories. And yet again, letting go of any self-judgment of all of that, understanding that this is just what the mind does. And so returning to our friend, the breath, to the body, to the present moment. Um, that was a good guided meditation. I should transcribe that one. That was pretty interesting. You know, um, always, it's kind of tricky trying to teach how to work with thoughts. I thought that was, hope that was helpful. It was helpful for me. So, and it, it was very much along the lines of what I wanted to talk about today. But I'll look at the book a little bit. The line that kind of stands out for me. So, just to orient you, I'm on page 202 of One Breath at a Time, the section called Top of the List, which is, as I said, the last section in step 9. And the line says, the person who had been hurt the most by my actions was me. I thought there was a line in here about how, no matter who else got hurt, the person who was there for every one of those harmful actions was ourselves. The entire path of sobriety can be seen as an amends to ourselves. And I think that there's a tendency, certainly I have the tendency to think of amends as being this external. It's about actions I take in the world. And I think that's a pretty limited idea of what it really means to make amends to ourselves. Certainly getting sober and really coming into recovery, which is obviously more than just stopping using, is external action, changing our lives in all the ways we need to. It takes a lot of change of behavior, and certainly making amends to other people also can involve a lot of behavioral things, both ongoing actions and then specific actions of making a direct amends for something. But this process of making amends to ourselves, I mean, again, it can certainly have external things that we clean up our lives and make our lives more healthy and more productive, and in fact more joyful. Finding new things to do, new ways of living, new activities that bring us pleasure and that bring meaning into our lives. And certainly meditation practice can be a really important part of that as well. But that's particularly where we do start to see how much internal work has to happen. Because ultimately our disease was an internal disease. It was a mental disease. I think that's what Goenka was once asked about addiction, and he said it's a mental disease. And the Alcoholics Anonymous big book says it's got the behavioral, it's got the spiritual, it's got the mental aspect. But when we start to meditate, and this is what I was talking about during the sit today, and we start to see the thoughts that our mind is pumping out, and then we do get to really a direct look at the destructiveness of our own minds, of our own thoughts. And this is where so much work confronts us, where we're faced with realizing that our self-view, and how automatic it is. You know, when you drop a plate and it breaks on the floor, I'm such an idiot, kind of, you know, the kind of things that we say to ourselves, uh, as well as the beliefs that we carry on, you know, in the background. And again, I was talking about that kind of conditioning, and much of it might be from our upbringing, or who knows what. You know, it's not so important where it comes from, but just to see how we really have to start examining and questioning everything that's coming through the mind. And this is why our practice is not just on a cushion. Uh, the cushion is a place where we really put the microscope on the mind, and we start to see, yeah, oh, that, oh, I never noticed that. But then you can take what you see there into your daily life. And when that thought shows up in the midst of things, that you can catch it now because you've started to put it into, bring it into awareness. Um, and this idea I was talking about kind of putting thoughts into kind of categories, starting to see that, uh, that, oh, that's just another one of those thoughts. Uh, and and again, that has the effect of making it less personal, of depersonalizing it. And of course, this is very much in line with the Buddhist concept of not self. And we realize that these thoughts, you know, here they are. We live inside our minds, and naturally enough, we think that our mind is who we are. You know, I mean, who else could we be? You know, if I'm not this person, if I'm not these thoughts, if I'm not this mind. But as we start to look more closely, we see that you can't really make a case for everything that shows up in your mind being oneself. You know, they they just they're not uh, there's they're not coherent. Your mind isn't really coherent. Your thoughts aren't really coherent as a whole self. And if you try to make them all into a self, you wind up with all these contradictions. And then what? Then what's the story you get out of that? I'm crazy, or the one of the stories we make is, oh, that's not the real me. The real me is this one. I mean, when we hear that, people say, someone does something really unskillful or violent or something, and well, that's not really me. That's not really them. My neighbor did that, but I know them. That's not really who they are. Well, of course, that's because we want to attribute who we are as being the good stuff, and the other stuff is an aberration. That's not really us. So we can either say, oh yeah, it's all me, which is okay, or we can say none of it is me. None of it is a self. Now, either way, we have to deal with it. That's the thing. It's like, just by saying it's not me doesn't mean it goes away. And I think, that's one of the things that we're trying to find, is something to make the bad stuff go away. And that's partly what our addiction was about. It's like, I want to make those bad feelings and those bad thoughts go away. And of course, addiction just makes them worse ultimately. Might suppress them for a few hours or whatever. So then, you join the cult that's going to like purify you, or you move to Thailand because when you're there, you'll be a different person. The geographic, or you have a baby, because if I have a baby, then I'll be, that'll really change me. Uh, I don't know. I was looking at Dana there. I'm sorry if I. I can read people's minds through the computer. It's really an amazing thing. Uh, you know, uh, Actually, Sean Colvin has a line like that about I'll have to look that up about would something happen if I had a baby. Anyway, which she did wind up doing. So that's an aside. So yeah, that I was when I was sitting this morning earlier, I kind of was having this image of all the ways that I tried to like fix myself, you know, and and a lot of it was this like attempt to like do something external that was then going to change how I experienced life internally. And our Dharma practice kind of says, I mean, sure, the external is part of it, but then obviously with addiction, I can't like ignore that. You know, that's particularly with substance abuse. Uh, that yeah, there's this big external element. But once we solve, or at least get a handle on the external element, we realize that the disease is still there, you know. And I use the term disease advisedly because I know there's questions and doubts about whether we want to call it a disease, but let's just say the conditions are still there. Uh, and that's what we have to deal with. And that's why people relapse, frankly. You know, that's like you can get through a certain period of time, maybe a couple of years, maybe a bunch of years, without really healing and doing the inner healing work that has to happen. But eventually, this is what you meet, and that's what I've always thought that the work that I'm doing is really meant for is for people to face that part of the process, the internal amends. So we can say, you know, very explicitly that Buddhism, with the practice of self-compassion or loving kindness, that these point directly at trying to engage and respond to the negativity inside the mind, and that can work for some people. I I'm a little, you know, my mind is very stubborn, you know, and rebellious. So that when I try to like, if I sort of try the direct route of sort of trying to give myself love or give myself self-compassion, that there's kind of it can create like a battle. You know, it's almost too straightforward, almost too direct. That for me, it's more of a process of looking at. I think for me, the wisdom element works better. And this isn't going to be true for everybody. Each of us has to find our own way of working with this. But for me, the wisdom element of seeing the falseness of the thoughts, seeing through the thoughts, how they don't make sense, how they're not credible, is more helpful for me than trying to like directly say, "Oh, you deserve love." It's like, yeah, everybody deserves love, um, but and and it's also for me more of a also there's a felt experience that I find helpful, which is feeling the inner pain and then bringing not words or thoughts, but bringing a kind of attitude, which is a kind of um, motherly or parental or kind of attitude, which, you know, calls to mind the line from the Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with the boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. So if we can get a sense or a feeling that that we contain both the mother and the child within us. Sort of, again, a little digression that the Buddhists, there are Buddhist teachings. I think this more out of the Tibetan, but I think this might be in the Theravadan too. That everyone has been through the many lifetimes of reincarnation, that we have each been our own, everybody else's parent and everybody else's child, and so we can think that we have been our own parent and our own child. Maybe that doesn't. There's maybe no real logic to that, but again, as I say, it's more this kind of felt experience of feeling the tenderness within us, of the wounds that come from the thoughts, that come from the beliefs, or that just come from the traumas, the life wounds, and feeling them, but then feeling them with kindness, with warmth, with a maternal kind of care. So that's a practice. That's a practice of self-compassion. It's just like, it's not so verbal. I guess a lot of the guided meditations sort of have these verbal elements of speaking to yourself, and again, that can be helpful. And I've done those practices. At this point in my practice, I'm sensing it more as a felt experience. But I think it's an exploration for each of us, and that I hesitate to. In fact, I want to avoid saying this is how you should approach this process in terms of like the practice that you should do to deal with this. Assuming that each of us has some inner pain, or wounds or difficulties that we have to deal with. But I think any approach to this has to start first with the recognition of what's going on, or first with the recognition of the pain and how it kind of arises and how it manifests, whether it is coming through thoughts, like specifically, oh, I have these negative patterns of thought, or whether it is more a trauma element where it's just a felt experience that's reactive, that doesn't sort of have there isn't necessarily a thought connected, but it's more just like, as I say, I use the term wounds because that's kind of how it feels, like there's a woundedness. It was really interesting. I just spent the last week with my daughter who just turned 23, and I hadn't seen her in a while, and we were together like 24/7, like practically. And we're very close, and in some ways we're really very different on kind of energetically, but we're also what I started to see was like one of my real flaws is my moodiness. Like, I can just really get triggered into mood. And boy, I saw that in her, and I was like, oh, this is the bad thing that I gave her. This is, it's very different how it manifests in her moods and what they are. But it's like, yeah. But we both also like have this ability to kind of like snap out of it. But that's like a wound, that's not really a thought connected to it. It's just like, you walk through the door and all of a sudden, your mind your heart, mind, whatever, just goes, ugh, and you feel like off, and you're kind of like, well, what happened? Where'd that come from? And maybe you can trace it back to something, but it's just these deeply embedded things. So I'm still talking. I was going to stop talking, but but I think saying that um, another piece of this, and I think I talk a lot about this, but another piece of this is the not trying to fix it or not feeling that it has to change. That there are feelings and things that are going to come through that are very habitual, and you work with them, and you've done therapy, and you've done whatever medication, and and you have a nice life, and yet they still kind of pop up. And that's where, to me, there's also just the bottom line of acceptance. Like, oh, well, this is life. This is dukkha. This is like the way it is. And if I'm because one of the dangers of this whole process of kind of healing is that we start to think that there's a cure for everything. And if I don't cure it, then there's something wrong with me. I'm doing something wrong. I need to look harder for the cure. You know, if I were just enlightened, then I'd be cured. And there's a great Zen saying. It's in One Breath at a Time somewhere. Now that I'm enlightened, I'm as miserable as ever. You know, and I love that saying, because I'm like, oh, good. It's not supposed to like fix you on some like make everything perfectly, shiny, and there's never any pain. And I think that is, again, quite obviously one of the characteristics of addicts, is that's what we wanted, was to never have any pain. So part of all this is not just healing, but not healing, and just being able to be wounded and live with wounds. And that's life, and that's okay. And maybe that's being an adult, or I don't know, maybe not, I don't know. So I'll leave it at that, and open it up for any thoughts or comments anyone has today. Yes, Dolores.
Thank you, Kevin. I have lots of thoughts and very, very grateful. Um, as I shared the first night I spoke, interrupted the group, I should say, didn't know, the proper thing to do. I said that I had just finished my 8th step, and I was beginning my 9th, and like, to me, like, that's a God story, that I should call you for the first time and you should be speaking. And you're speaking exactly what I have to hear, because I've been in the program a long time, 43 years, and relapsed many times with food, not with alcohol. And I'm doing this 8th step, and I'm thinking, I have made amends to these people, so many times. Do I really have to do it again? I don't know. I'll have to talk to my sponsor about it. And I ended up with the amends I have to make right now are to myself, to God, and to the 12-step community and life in general, for being so dishonest, although I didn't know I was being dishonest. Living a lie, being a leader and a speaker and teaching people and whatnot, and yet deep down inside still carry this bitterness and this resentment that I somehow can't seem to let go of. And all the words that you've been using all along, especially today, that it is what it is. It's the dukkha because of my post-traumatic stress disorder. I was so traumatized as a child. And I've truly, truly forgiven my family. And I kept saying, why do I still have these memories? Well, you're giving me an understanding of why I'm having these memories, and I'm able to, I feel so free because I'm able to let it go and see that I have forgiven them, So that's one part that I wanted to really share with you. The other thing is, like, I've been listening faithfully since January 11th. In fact, it's 4 months today to Thich Nhat Hanh. every morning faithfully, because he taught me how to embrace my depression, embrace my suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, oh, I still got this depression, or I'm still at, he taught me to embrace it. And I'm doing that. I'm doing that. And in fact, if I do wake up, I'm usually very happy in the morning. And I haven't been that for a long, long time, because I had been in relapse for about 3 years and gained 45 pounds, with the food. And I'm happy, I'm really happy. And if I have a slight depression that I don't want to get up, I'll say, let's go, depression. It's time to get up. Like I'm accepting it.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
in my psyche, and just everything that you're saying. I don't
Yeah.
have to repeat, and it feels so wonderful. It just feels so wonderful. And I want to thank you with all my heart, because you're giving words to, I'm reading your book also faithfully and making a lot of notes. You're giving words to my knowing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's so exciting. It's so exciting. And I'll just share a real funny story and then I'll stop. I happened to see a movie last week, uh, an old movie of My Fair Lady. And I love that movie and I love the songs and whatnot. And I thought, this is nice to watch this again, do something different. Well, I woke up one morning because of all this experience that I'm having, that I'm sharing with you. It's like, oh, it's like, I got it. I finally got this. It's not just being free from the substances, but it's to want to be a woman of integrity and honor. And like, that's together. That has to be together.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, oh, I want to be thin because I want to look good, that kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to be a person of integrity. I want to be thin and I want to look well. I mean, I've lost over 100 pounds and was miserable, but I want that. I want that. And it's almost like, this is it. Oh my, this is it. Like, I got it. Not that I have to work this program every day and do everything. I'm not saying I don't have to work anymore. I love the last line after the promises, it just comes. We're not, we're not cocky. We're not afraid. And at the end, it says, as long as we, stay in fit spiritual condition, meditating, working the steps. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. But I have this, I got it. Oh, it's like, I got it. Well, I woke up one morning singing from My Fair Lady, 6:00 in the morning. The rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain. She got it. By George, she got it.
Yeah.
Thinking of Professor Higgins, how hard he worked with Eliza Doolittle, and her stubbornness and I'm saying, God and I are dancing around the bedroom and God is saying, she got it. By George, she got it. It was like that kind of experience that was just so freeing and so wonderful. I have a question that I'll add on to all this, and then I'll be stopped and listen to you. I want this group, I faithfully on Tuesday and Friday night to be my sangha, because Nit Nhan says that that's important, that community and that fellowship. So can I have these two groups as my sangha? That's my question. Thank you.
Why not?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Good.
you.
I just wish they would have used Julie Andrews in the movie, but other than that, it was great.
Yeah.
To say, nice to see you.
Yes. Hi, Kevin. I just wanted to say the timing of what you were sharing today was quite incredible, because, I mean, you said that addicts never want to feel pain. And it suddenly clicked, that's what's going on in my head. And right now I'm doing this book with my sponsor. And the exercise that we had to do today was exercise, stop fighting, surrender to the process. And I don't want to surrender, because surrendering means, well, I accept that I'm not working anymore because I have burnout. well, no, I can't accept that. I can't be burnt out. Like, I need to get better. I need to meditate harder. I need to, And then so today's topic was really, for me, it was is perfect. And it went hand in hand with the exercise that I had to do today. Like, both the messages are so clear, like, just let go
Mhm.
and accept, because the messages that I give myself can be so mean.
Mm.
But coming to it with a parental love never even crossed my mind. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Mm. Well, any other thoughts, questions? Hmm.
Hi, Kevin. It's Angela.
Hello.
I'll say something really cool. I'll try to be really quick. Thank you. Nice to see you. Yeah, this is also very much, lining up with sort of what I'm working on. And I read just quickly through the section. And I really liked what you said about, the spirit. There's no particular way we make amends to ourselves. Rather, it's a spirit we bring to our lives, the spirit of joy and engagement, of generosity and possibility, of openness and imagination. Because I've been sort of reflecting on, and I think I've shared about it as well, like the spirit with which I show up to my recovery and my practice is like very much of, I'm not okay and I need to be fixed. And yeah, I mean, I just really, everything that you said was just so helpful today. And yeah, so it's just a good reminder. Because again, of course, my mind is like, oh yeah, you're just, showing up with that spirit. And I mean, I'm slowly learning, like I've started to explore how it might look to sort of just befriend myself, which is not something I've really spoken about yet in my recovery, like looking at it in that way. And again, I guess that's like a way that I'm using my imagination a little bit, how to sort of work with this, this voice that I've carried with me for so long that just keeps telling me that I'm not enough, no matter what. And the more that I do to try to, help it, is making it almost like more stark, or just more, I'm just more aware of it, I guess. So anyway, and this class is just so amazing. So thank you. And thanks to, everybody.
Well, it's like, in Buddhist terms, like the conundrum of right effort. It's like, well, I know that I have to do something. It's not that I'm like, acceptance doesn't mean passivity. And yet, how do I do that without it being colored by a sense of not enough, or that having to be fixed or having to be different? And there's I had there's a line also, I think it's in the other book, Burning Desire, about discipline. And as I was writing that book and realizing that the word discipline was connected to being a disciple, and and that could be thought of as somebody who was really devoted to something. And then if I'm devoted to my spiritual practice, if I have a devotion that's coming out of the heart, um, it's not coming out of a punitive attitude. And Joseph Goldstein refers to this when he takes the word ardent, which is in the suttas. It's in the suttas quite a bit, and it's in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, when he says we should be ardent and resolute and a couple of other things. But Joseph talks about how ardency is this feeling from the heart that that we feel that it's something we associate with love, and that if we can bring this sense of love of the path, love of the practice, love of the Dharma, and that's taking refuge, right? Uh, which is again a very kind of maternal. If this is, I mean, whatever. I will try to, apologize for using what might be thought of as sexist, because I think it's, I mean it in the most generic way. But this kind of refuge is like being protected by something, right? Being held by something. You go to something for refuge, that thing holds you and protects you, and that's that kind of ardency. And it's interesting. You also said befriend yourself, because Analio talks about metta being friendliness, and generally I'm not very satisfied with that translation, but in that sense of just kind of like not trying to make it into a big thing, but just like befriending yourself. Like how would a friend treat me? A friend would treat me with kindness and with forgiveness and compassion. A friend wouldn't be, abusing me. Uh, so yeah, nice. So yeah, I am going to be teaching tonight, um, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Um, in Colorado, which is where it's going to be for the Boulder Insight Group, which a friend of mine started and runs. And I'm giving a talk called Present Moment, Wonderful Moment. And as I look at the notes I have, it's not going to be that different from what I talked about this morning. Pretty much talk about the same thing all the time. I also want to make note that this will be the second Friday of the month, this Friday, which means that I will, on Friday evening, I will not be on this Zoom link. I will be on the Spirit Rock Zoom link, which I have on my website on the Zoom page. And Angela often puts it in. I think she's trying to put it in now. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, for people who are new or want to connect with other people here, we have a list. If you scroll through the chat, we have a list of people who have sort of signed up to be, friends, supporters, even maybe sponsoring, kind of giving you help in your meditation practice. Zoom for tonight. Good question. Thank you, Lisa. Let me see if I can find that.
I also put that in the chat.
What? Oh, you have it? You put it in the chat?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, great. How did you get it?
I searched online for it.
Oh God, these youths who know how to find things online. So I'm gonna consider this the end of the class, but Angela, if you would hang out, can't make anybody leave, but I want to see if I can get my microphone working.
Sure.
So, so thanks to everyone. Have a great day. Hope I'll see you all either later today or later in the week or next week or some other time.
Lovely.
So